You're listening to the Diagnosed podcast, where every diagnosis has a story, and every story deserves to be heard. From survivors to loved ones, we explore the journey together with your host, Albano.
If you get value out of this video, please like, subscribe, and hit that bell. Let's get on to the video. Thanks so much anyway, Laura, for being able to come on and share your story, because I know you have a pretty in-depth story when it comes to cancer, between being diagnosed and your treatments and then everything that you've done over the years to give back. So I really appreciate you sharing all that.
Thank you. Well, I mean, in all honesty, it's I that is honored to have been asked to come on. It's very, very commendable what you're doing, Albano, with bringing attention and awareness, obviously, not just necessarily to cancer, but to all these other issues that we are dealing with in this day and age. So for that, you must be commended. Congratulations.
Well, I appreciate that, Laura. Thank you. Thank you so much. So in terms of a quick agenda, I want to talk about, obviously, your diagnosis, followed by your treatments, and then everything you did subsequent to those treatments, because I know you've dedicated many years of your life giving back to the community and your cause. So why don't we talk about the beginning and your diagnosis, like maybe the year that you were diagnosed and how that all started and how that all came about?
Well, ironically enough, so I was diagnosed in 2004, and the method in which I came to find out I had breast cancer was somewhat unorthodox, I guess, for lack of a better choice of words. I was turning 40 that year, and my husband, God bless him, who every year says, oh, what do you want for your birthday? What do you want for your birthday? And I said to him, well, to be honest with you, I said, I would like to get a breast lift. I was a much, much heavier woman in my younger days. And because of the excessive weight loss, everything just kind of went south. So I said, I that's what I really want to do. But of course, he was always against it, and I needed his approval. So he finally said yes. And I just jumped all over that. So made an appointment with a very well-known plastic surgeon, explained exactly what I wanted. And so while we were in his office, he explained the whole procedure to me, which was great, and then brought me into the examination room. And during the examination, he says, have you ever felt that? And I said, well, felt what? And he says, you have a lump. He says, now, it may be a little difficult for you because the lump was situated fairly deep behind the nipple area. So it's not when a woman normally does her breast exams, it's usually kind of going around as opposed to going deep. And I said, no, I've never noticed that. And he says, well, I'm going to get you in for an ultrasound. And I said, okay, fine. I think my first concern, I mean, at that point, I wasn't really worried. I've had no history of any type of cancer in my family. I felt great. There was no issues that I was concerned about. But the fact that he got me in within half an hour, he wanted that ultrasound done, that kind of threw me for a little bit of a loop. So I said, okay, fine. And I went and got the ultrasound, back to his office, gets on the phone, and now he's ordering a biopsy that he wants done within the next few days. So I was a little concerned about that, obviously. I did get the biopsy done. The results came back positive. I was stage 2, hormone receptive positive, which made it a little more urgent to deal with. It was a tough time. I come from a very, very tight-knit, close family. And I didn't really want to say anything to the family until I knew exactly what was going to happen, exactly what I needed to do. I didn't know if I needed surgery, if I was getting a lumpectomy or a complete mastectomy. I didn't know anything at this point. Um, the only one who knew what was going on was my sister. I hadn't even told my husband at that time. My husband, having lost an aunt to breast cancer, would have automatically taken that as a death sentence. So I didn't even say anything to him. So the first, let's say 6 weeks was pretty tough, just kind of keeping this all to myself, between myself and my sister, and going to Princess Margaret and getting these tests done and speaking to the oncologist there and the surgeon, and finally getting a treatment plan of what I was going to go through. And then at that point, I sat down and I spoke to Mike, my husband, and told him what was going on. Obviously, he took it the way I expected him to. It was very hard. Our kids at the time were 6 and 9. They were very young. He's got all of these things going through his head, like, his wife has to go to chemo now. What about the kids? And what about the house? And what about, like, there's all these things that come flooding in all of a sudden. Um, was not much better when I told my mom, who obviously took it very hard as well. The one thing I could say for myself is that, I'm not going to lie and say that I wasn't concerned or I wasn't scared or anything like that, but I was extremely positive. I didn't want anybody around me that had any level of negativity. I didn't want to see that look in their face or that solemnness. But I needed people to be positive around me because I was positive. As far as I was concerned, I was going to beat this come hell or high water. Or if it was going to take me, it was going to take me with my last breath because there was no way I was going to give up.
Yeah, I'm
So
so glad you said that because it's so important, I think, for people to have that right mindset going in.
absolutely, absolutely it is. That mindset helped me through all of it. It helped me through the treatment. It helped me through with the family. Um, people, I don't want to make it sound like I'm tapping myself on the back, but people were in awe of how normal I was. You know, it's like, well, how could she be doing this, dealing with this? It's like, it's okay. I'm dealing with it. It's good. But in the meantime, I have a life to live and I have 2 young kids and, so yeah, the positivity is like top on the list when it comes to that. So I was very grateful that they were all able to kind of rally around me. And I'd have to remind mom every once in a while because she would dip. But for the most part, they were all great. Like they really were.
Laura, the one thing that I just picked up and I want to touch on is that I believe they may have changed it now, but I believe at that time screening was only done at 50. So you were very fortunate that you actually went in for a different procedure and got this picked up.
That's right. Ironically enough, I schedule my annual physicals every year right around my birthday. So that's my reminder to myself that I have to get my physical done. And I had gone for my physical in September before I saw the plastic surgeon. And I asked my doctor at the time, can I go for a mammogram now? And he just flat out, not necessary, Laura. He says, you're only 40, you've got lots of time. We're not going to start till 50. And I says, well, like, is that written in stone? Like, why can't I just start it now? Like, what's the difference? And he says, no, no, no. He says, it's not, not necessary now. I said, okay, fine. Again, never a thought in my mind because I was never really concerned about it. But that's exactly what happened. So needless to say, he was shocked when I went back to see him afterwards. I don't even think he knew what to say to me. And since then, I've been telling women everywhere, do not allow them to negate you this choice. If you want to get this mammogram done before you're golden age of 50 for some reason that they put on there. Get it done. It's unbelievable how many women I saw in Princess Margaret that were in their late 20s, early 30s going through this. How would they know? I didn't know, and I was already stage 2, borderline stage 3. So how would you know until it's too late? So the importance of getting it done, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I'm finding that more and more people are getting diagnosed at a younger age, specifically breast cancer, let's say. So I
Yep.
don't know why they don't start screening earlier. It just doesn't make any sense to
I
me. But
I have no idea. I've been on boards or on meetings with Princess Margaret Hospital. Now, the one good thing, and I probably, don't quote me on this because I'm not sure whether it would be considered private or covered. That I'm not sure. But the rapid clinic at Princess Margaret, the Catuzzo Rapid Clinic, I believe anyone can go there and just call there, make an appointment, go, and in one day you will get everything from screening to what your treatment plan is, which is remarkable. Um, but yeah, I don't know why they keep harping on that. Now,
yeah,
my family members going forward, so my sister, um, my niece, when the time, or actually my niece has already, they have no issue because now there's a family history. But my question was always, well, I mean, family history starts somewhere.
right.
Obviously, it started with me. So, now my sister benefits from it, which is amazing, and my nieces will all benefit from it. Um, but it shouldn't have to be that way. I mean, any woman should be able to do it.
Yeah. I took you off track a little bit with your story after being diagnosed, but let's get back to that and tell me.
Yep.
Let's get into what they found in after your 6 weeks of doing tests, what they
Hmm.
prescribed as a remedy. What was that like for you after that?
Okay. So originally, when I went back to see the oncologist, he told me that he felt comfortable with doing a lumpectomy as opposed to a mastectomy. And then obviously followed by chemotherapy and radiation. I don't, um, I wasn't comfortable with that. I was more fearful of it coming back than I was of anything else. And I told him that. I said, listen, for lack of a better choice of words, I am not going to risk my life for a breast. That's just not going to happen. So if it needs to come off, it needs to come off. I don't have an issue with that. But he was fairly confident, and from what I had researched, he was a very well-known surgeon or oncologist surgeon. So I went with his opinion. So we ended up doing a lumpectomy. Now, it did result in a little bit more than he had anticipated was going to be removed, which is fine. Again, I had no issues with that as long as I knew it was totally removed. So it was a successful surgery. And then 2 weeks after surgery, I started my chemotherapy. So chemo I did for 8 months, and it was once every 2 weeks for 8 months down to Princess Margaret, which obviously was very difficult, very hard. Not just the chemo itself, but then, of course, all of the relevant effects of it with the kids, which was extremely difficult for me. The word cancer was never spoken in my house. I didn't want the kids to really catch on to anything. A part of me thought that they wouldn't understand it anyways. They were 6 and 9. Well, I was wrong. Um, so we never spoke about it. All they knew was mommy's not feeling very well and she's going to be looking a little different and, she's going to lose her hair, but don't worry, it'll all come back and, kind of explaining chemotherapy to a 6-year-old or a 9-year-old. Until one day, it was about 2 days, I believe, after chemo, I was lying in bed and the boys came home from school, and they come running into the bedroom and, jump on the bed, and they're telling me about their day at school and all of this, and my oldest, who was 9, looks at me and says, "Mom, can I ask you a question?" And I said, "Of course." And he says, "But you know what our rule is, right?" So our sacred rule was, you never lie. You always tell the truth, no consequences, no yelling and screaming, but you never lie. So I says, "Yeah, of course I know our secret rule or our primary rule." He goes, "Okay, because I'm going to ask you a big one." And I said, "That's fine." Looks me dead in the eyes and says, "Mom, do you have cancer?" And I just froze. And I said, "Yes." And then the hardest question that I've ever had to answer was him looking at me saying, "Are you gonna die, Mom?" I said, "I sure hope not, buddy." That's about as honest as I can get. I
It's
said, "But
such a
nothing you need to
difficult
worry."
conversation to have with somebody
Oh,
at that age. Like,
it's it's unbelievable. Like it really was unbelievable. Um, I think in some way it changed my kids that day. There was a different type of attentiveness or a different type of uh, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but I made it as best I could for them. I mean, at the time, the boys were huge fans of Eminem. I'd walk around the house wearing this little white beanie, playing Eminem music and letting them, dance and whatnot. And so again, trying to keep the positivity up there. But yeah, that was the most difficult time of this whole thing. But I managed to get through chemo. And then shortly after chemo, I believe it was 4 weeks, I started radiation. Radiation I found fairly easy. I didn't really have, any effects of the radiation. Um, I mean, I was a little bit tired, but I think that was more because I was going down to Princess Margaret every day. So it's like up and I lived in Brampton, so up in the morning, drive to to the subway and get on the subway and, do that every day. You get a little tired after a certain time. But other than that, radiation was not bad. I mean, in no comparison, obviously, to the chemotherapy. So completed that, and then they waited 4 weeks and redid all the tests and told me that I was clear. Everything had been caught, everything had been removed. The chemotherapy killed off anything else. Um, that, yeah, I was basically in the clear. I had beat it. So I thought, okay. But then most, I'm sure most people know that there's always that 2 to 5 year period that, you have to wait because, chances of it coming back. So, yeah, it was a little nerve wracking. I'll admit, sometimes any little pain I felt or anything different would send me into panic, going, "Oh no, here we go again." But it never did. Thank God, it never did. And I'll be forever grateful for Princess Margaret for what they did. They were phenomenal. They really were.
yeah, that I'm going to call it PTSD. In your case, maybe it wasn't, but I find that a lot of people who do treatments or surgery or treatments, they're very attentive to their body after that. And they tend to think that, you know, maybe something's happening, maybe it's not happening, maybe it's this. Did
Yeah,
you go through any of that?
I went
You
through
mentioned it
all.
just lightly, but yeah.
Yeah, I went through all of that. You know what? It was if I have a lot of scarring in the lobectomy area, so and even sometimes now, and it's been 20 plus years, uh, if I push down on it or I bang up my breast against something, but it actually hurts. So back then, of course, if I would lie down in bed and turn over, or I'd get a pain or I'd get a pinch, and I'd panic right away and I'd call the doctor the next day. Or if um, something else was going on interior, I'd call the doctor saying, okay, I think it may have moved, to my liver or to my this or to my that. Like, I want a full body screen. I drove my doctor crazy the first year after all of this was done, because that's what they say, right? It moves. It goes from one area to another, or it goes from one breast to another. And that was the one thing I wanted to avoid more than anything else, obviously. And I was lucky because it never did.
Yeah, Laura, you mentioned that I don't know about the chemo, but on the radiation, you mentioned that you were taking public transit down to the hospital. Did you do
Yep.
that for chemo as well, or did you have
No,
somebody
no,
that?
for chemo,
Yeah,
no, no. For
because
chemo,
chemo's
it was
yeah,
either, yeah, my sister that would take me, or it would be my husband. I was very, very lucky, in the sense that my family was prepared, or I made sure to prepare my family for any kind of uh, concerns that would come up in the future. My husband was able to take 6 months off of work and stay home with me, if not to take me to chemo to watch the kids or be there for the kids when he got home. And it didn't disrupt our lives in any way. So I was very, very grateful that, that worked out the way it did. Um, but no, chemo, oh, that was a whole different puppy. When I came out of chemo, I was usually pretty sick at that point.
yeah, chemo. Some people go through it and it doesn't affect them much, but some people it really beats them up.
Yeah.
And chemo, there's many different types of chemo and different strengths and all this, which is a
Mhm.
factor. So
Yes, of course.
I before we go any further, I wanted to ask you about. So I know what you were doing at that time in terms of a career, but
Right.
when you were diagnosed and going through your treatments, um, you were an insurance agent.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and specifically, you were selling life insurance, critical illness insurance. I mean, you
Right.
weren't dealing
So
with
I
home and
was,
auto.
well, I mean, I was advisor. Technically, I was selling everything: disability, life, critical illness, health. Mutual funds. I mean, I was fully licensed, so I was doing all of it. But ironically enough, my primary client base, uh, I loved the insurance more than I loved the mutual funds. I had very little patience for the mutual fund, so I dealt more with the insurance. For me, going to see a family and then walking out of that house thinking, doesn't matter what life throws at them, these guys are going to be okay. That made me feel good at the end of the day. So that's what I concentrated on. Critical illness, I found to be an extremely important tool to have in your overall financial needs. So it had only been out a couple of years actually when I took out mine.
Oh,
I
really?
was Yeah, I was extremely so I was always a little bit on the skeptical side. So as much as I um as much as I was as honest as I possibly could be with my clients, I would make sure that everything was right. So in other words, I would not go out and sell them something or offer them something if I didn't know myself that this product was 100% on board. So I did a lot of investigating on critical illness before I even started selling it. And the very first policy that I wrote was my own, because I figured, I'm going to be a real hypocrite if I'm coming to see Albano and saying, well, Albano, you really should have this in your financial profile. And I don't have it myself. I mean, so yeah, the very first policy I wrote for myself. I wrote it in February of 2003, and it paid me out in January of 2004.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
not even a
incredible.
year. Yeah, not
That's a
even a year.
testament in itself
Yeah,
to the product.
yeah,
So how did that
absolutely.
how did that conversation go with your clients post your diagnosis?
Well, I think everybody, when it comes to diagnosis of anything major, whether it's cancer, whether it's a stroke or a heart attack or all the other, Sun Life has got 25 different critical illnesses that they list on their policy that they would cover. Usually, immediately, everybody gets, every advisor will probably get the same response. It'll never happen to me. Oh, my mother lived to be 105. My father lived to be 100. It'll never happen to me. And I really didn't have a lot of leeway to get through to them because I was never the type of advisor that would push my clients into getting anything. I wanted it to be their decision. So I would often say to them, I'm your advisor. I will tell you what I think is right for you, but ultimately you make the final decision. And if you don't want it, then I will leave it alone. So, pre-breast cancer, pre-chemo and all of that, I'd probably say I had a 50-50 thing going with my clients. Half of them would take it. Half of them would argue that they don't need it, for whatever reason. Although I did sell quite a bit of it for children, which was amazing because obviously that's something they could have for the rest of their life and not have to worry about it. But the funny part, well, funny now that I think about it, is that after my chemo, and well, actually, not even after, it was probably towards the end of my chemo where I would have chemo and then I'd be off for a day or two, but then I'd feel okay. I decided I'm going back to work. And my husband just about lost his mind. And I said, I need to get out of the house. I need to get back out there and do what I'm doing. And so I called my assistant and I said, I need you to go back into my files and I need you to go back and pull out all those clients that declined the CI policy when I went to see them and book me in to see them again. So now I'm walking into these clients' homes and I've got a bandana on my head. I'm still going through chemotherapy. And, when they asked me, obviously some of them already knew because they had called me at the office and I wasn't there. But, I was honest. I said to them, guess what? I didn't think it would happen to me either, but it did. So, you need to prepare for it. That year in 2005, when I went back full-time, I was actually honored by Sun Life for the advisor with the most critical illness policies on record that anybody had ever done. And that was because I was going to see these people full-blown after chemo saying, this is what I'm talking about. I have no family history, none. And yet here I am. So it really hit home with a lot of them.
I can imagine that for sure. It was the right timing under the wrong circumstances.
Right, exactly.
Our sponsor for today's episode comes from Audrey Souza, a licensed insurance advisor dedicated to helping families stay financially supported through life's toughest moments. From life and critical illness insurance to long-term financial protection, Audrey works with clients across Toronto and Southern Ontario to create personalized plans that bring peace of mind today and security tomorrow. You can learn more by reaching out on Instagram at Audrey Souza Insurance or by email at audrey.souza@dfsin.ca. That's audrey.souza@dfsin.ca, because your family's future deserves more than what ifs. Yeah, I can definitely appreciate sitting on the other side of it and having an insurance advisor who's sick coming in to see me and talking to me about being covered. So that's interesting. The other thing I was just thinking as you were talking is that you had asked your husband to stay home for 6 months, and then while he's home, you're going back to work.
Well, no,
the irony is just you know, but I
No,
understand
you
it
went
because
back
for
to
you,
work.
it's your mental well-being. So
Yes,
I get it.
yes,
Like, I
yeah.
completely get it.
Yeah, you had to take your mind off of that. I mean, after all of that time, it was like, okay, I need to, and to be honest with you, I mean, hopefully he won't watch this, but to be honest with you, I think I was doing it more to just get away from him. But I needed, I needed some time. I needed the me time. And I knew this was a perfect time for me to get the message out there the way I wanted it to be out there. Um, and realistically, I believe actually, no, Mike was already back at work because he only took 6 months off, and I didn't go back until closer to the end of the year. So I
Okay.
believe he was already back at work. But yeah, it it made a huge, huge impact on us. I mean, having to be able to do all of that without worrying about mortgage payments, bill payments, the kids' sports or anything else, like nothing, absolutely nothing changed in our lives. Whereas unfortunately, many times you do hear that, someone's had a diagnosis and now all of a sudden, they can't work and they can't afford this and they don't have money to pay that. And that's heartbreaking. Um, so yeah, there is a way to avoid that. It's just, make the call. Make the call and find out about it. It doesn't hurt.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a big believer in the product myself, as you know, and
Mhm.
I agree. I just think it's just something that fundamentally you should have in your portfolio.
Absolutely. Yep.
So
Yep.
when you were finished your treatments, both um, your chemo and your radiation, and
Mhm.
life moves on for you, I know that you are committed to giving back to this community.
Right.
So I want to transition a little bit into that because you started, I don't think they have it anymore today, but you started, if there's anything that I'm missing, let me know. But I know that you started a team and you were doing a 60-kilometer, 2-day weekend to end breast cancer event.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
So it actually all started with my sister and a friend of mine. Um, the year that I was still going through chemo, uh, they registered for the weekend to end breast cancer, and it was benefiting the Princess Margaret Hospital, and it was a 2-day, 60-kilometer walk through the streets of Toronto. They obviously had to fundraise for it, which they did, and they did it in support of me, um, to surprise me, to show me that they were supportive of everything, and to keep fighting. Obviously, I could not be a part of it that year because I wasn't in any condition to do it. But I was there on Saturday night. I made Mike drive me to Downsview Park on Saturday night when they came in after the first day of walking, and um, it was just the most emotional period. I don't think I would be lying if I said I probably cried more during that weekend to end breast cancer than I did dealing with my own diagnosis. Hearing everybody's stories and how everybody dealt with things and people that survived and unfortunately people that didn't. Um, it was gut wrenching. And so many people, some walking for themselves, some walking for others. So the following year, I decided, yeah, I'm in. Let's do this. So then it was me and my sister and a friend of ours. And then little by little, people started, we want to join, we want to join. And by the end of it, I believe we were like 12 of us, 12 women. So we had our own little team happening. And we did that consecutively for probably about 4 or 5 years. And then the team kind of disbanded. Everybody's busy. Everybody has lives and kids and stuff. And, fundraising is not always the easiest thing to do. I think most people that have tried it know that.
I would imagine
Um,
that 60 kilometers is also not the easiest thing.
no, no, it wasn't. But we did it. We did do it, and we were determined, so we were really good that way. We kind of pushed each other to get through that finish line. Um, so again, the team had pretty much disbanded, but I decided to stay on. I wanted to do this. It was something I needed to do. That's what I felt. So actually, both myself and my husband stayed on. Although Mike didn't walk, Mike would do taxi service. So he would drive the whole route. And if anybody got injured or anybody needed to go back to base for whatever reason, he would get the call. He'd go pick them up and take them and stuff. So he was very valuable for the weekend itself as well.
So he was
So in
volunteering.
total, sorry?
He was volunteering
Yes,
for
yes,
services.
yes, he
Yeah.
was volunteering. Um, so in total, we did the weekend for probably about 11 years. Yeah, it was 11 years. And then they changed it, unfortunately. It became a 2-day walk to a 1-day walk. Um, but by that point, I had started getting involved on the fundraising side of things, in other ways, as opposed to just the weekend to end breast cancer. Um, so we stopped going after the 11th year, but we started doing something else. So now every year for this year will be 21 years. Um, I hold a fundraiser benefiting the Princess Margaret Hospital Foundation. That has grown exponentially.
Laura,
The very first, sorry, go ahead.
before we get into that, I just want to go back and ask you one quick question
Yep.
about the 60-kilometer walk. You said
Mhm.
that your first year it was extremely emotional for you, more so than doing the treatments yourself.
Right.
Did that ever change in the whole 11 years?
No.
Did you get used to it? Did it become more amplified as time went on?
I never got used to it. Every year you would hear different stories from different people and different outcomes, so everything would come rushing back. Um,
It's so grounding, isn't it?
it's very, very grounding. I had actually met a team, and I remember this clearly because I actually ended up calling Mike to give us a hand. Um, there there was a team of about 6 women, I believe, 6, maybe 7 women, but one of them in particular was in a wheelchair, and she was the one who was suffering from cancer, from breast cancer. And her team obviously was, pushing her around with a wheelchair because she wanted to do the walk. And we were at one point in a fairly large park. I can't remember which park it was, but there was quite a bit of uphill. So the girls were struggling with the wheelchair to get her up. So I kind of gave them a hold, and I called Mike, and he came over and he helped push her up. And so we became quite close. And for about 2 years after that, we would see each other every year there. And, we'd joke around and how you do it and how are things and, that stuff. Then one year I went, or the following year I went, and the girls were there and the wheelchair was there, but they were pushing an empty wheelchair.
Wow.
And I thought, I already knew, but I went to go see them. And of course, nothing needed to be said. We just hugged and one of the girls said, we promised her that she would complete this walk with us. This is why we're doing this.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
When you hear stuff like that, you can't help but fall apart. It just kills you to listen to that. And that was just one. There were so many. Um, we had the infamous Kitty who was, 99 years old or something like that, and she would be all dressed up, and that woman would walk. Granted, she would not do 60 kilometers, but hey, You're like 90 years old, 92 years old, and you are walking, and people would cheer her and root her. And like she had her own cheering section, every section we walked by. She was amazing.
Yeah,
Now,
if
if
that's not
that's not
inspiring
building,
to everybody else, right?
exactly. And that's what she used to say all the time. If I can do it, you can do it. Stop whining. If I can do it, you, because of course, by the second day, we're all dying. And it's like, we can't do this anymore. Um, just a remarkable, remarkable woman. But there were so many. So no, it never really changed. Every story always hit you, and it was tough.
Yeah, I find the community, like the cancer community, I find I mean, obviously it's a huge community, but when you speak with others, like you and I are doing right now,
Hmm.
it's, I don't know how to put it into words, but I was speaking, let me say it this way. I was speaking to somebody this week, and he was telling me that, or it was actually last week, and he was telling me that he went to the doctor and they did some tests on him for cancer. And the nurse came up to him and said that he was diagnosed with cancer. Okay. And the way he said it was, I've known so many people that have had cancer, relatives, people back in the old country, friends, coworkers, whatever. And he said, it wasn't in my backyard. So really, it was always far away. And he said it was kind of
Yeah,
like a war going on the other side of the world. It's there,
right,
people are dying, there's, tragedy, but it's not in your backyard. He
right.
said, as soon as I heard those words, my whole life changed. He said,
Yep,
I saw my kids, I saw my life. He said, everything just changed immediately for me.
yep.
And I think when you hear that, that's what that community does. I mean, you can relate to those people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I know for a couple of years, I would have people call me. Um, some were friends, some were family, uh, extended family, and they would say, Laura, you know, so and so just got diagnosed with cancer and she's having a really rough time. Do you think you could talk to her? I said, of course, absolutely. If she's willing to talk to me, I will go talk to her. And I would go and I'd sit with these people and I would talk to them and I'd, explain the importance of positive thinking and just kind of go through my whole, what I went through and, reassure them that they're not alone. I mean, and I did that for quite a few people actually. Um, Sun Life had given me a stage. There was a big conference seminar that they were doing. And of course, having won the Critical Illness Award that year, wanted me to do a presentation, not just so much on the critical illness itself, but my story and what brought me to that point. So I actually did do a lot of speaking about it, the first couple of years after my diagnosis. But it's very important, which is why I commended you for what you're doing now, because sometimes people don't want to hear it. Like they don't. It's like, oh, that don't, like you say, other end of the world has nothing to do with me. I don't want to hear about it. I'm happy. Let me be, until something happens. And then they scramble and they don't know where to go, what to do, how to act. And it's sad. It's really sad.
Yeah, it's not something you can prepare for. I mean,
No.
I've said this before, but I mean, it's not something you're going to read in a book and prepare you for this
Yep.
scenario. It's not going to happen that way.
Yep. Very true.
So you went on from the walk and you started fundraising,
Mhm.
and you've been doing the Evening of Hope. So I know that's
Correct.
been a big part of your life, and I know you've committed many hours every year
Yeah.
for I don't know how many years. It's got to be close to 20 years. 20 years or so is
21 this year. Yeah, 21
okay.
years this year. Yeah.
Because I think the first time I attended was either 2007 or 2008, and we've been, so it's I know it's been a long time. So
Yes.
talk to me about that, how you started that and how it developed and grew, because I know right now it's a big event, and obviously it takes a lot of planning, and you've raised a lot of money. So let's
It, yeah, it definitely takes a lot of planning, that's for sure. Um, so originally I started the event in order to help me with the fundraising for the 60-kilometer weekend to end breast cancer. Every walker had to raise $2,500. And even though I wasn't necessarily ill at the time, but I was still recouping. I didn't exactly have a hell of a lot of energy in me. So I'm trying to figure out what is the easiest way to do this that people would accept, and I'd be able to fundraise it, take care of it all in one night if I can, right? So I planned this fundraiser. My first one was about 100, and I believe it was about 140 people. And I did it at a banquet facility in Nobleton. And I did the whole, dinner, dance, music, the whole 9 yards. Um, and I ended up raising close to $4,000 that night. And I thought, wow, like, done. This is how I'm fundraising every year. It went from 130 people, who I will say most of were friends and family, not even outside people. Usually they were all friends and family, to today. So today we are 21 years later. We host the event at the Venetian Banquet Hall in Vaughan. We are well over 700 people. It's a sold out event every year. People will start emailing me or messaging me usually in, July or August saying, what's going on? Have you confirmed the date? Have we done? It's like, slow down. I still have time. I'm still recouping from the last one, but it's an amazing event. And I think what makes it what it is two things. We're there to celebrate. We're there to celebrate the lives of those that have fought and won. And we're there to celebrate the lives of those who have fought and unfortunately lost. We make it a point of saying that, it's either way, it's a celebration of life, and it's a celebration of life for anybody that has gone through it, anybody that is going through it. Um, it's just an amazing night. It really, really is. So we're very, very proud. My partner, Laura Dana, and I put a lot into this every year. Um, and we're just extremely proud of all of our returning guests. Most of them have been coming for the last, 50, 20 years. Like you say, they don't miss one. Um, it's just remarkable. And we're so, so thankful for it.
Are the funds still going to Princess Margaret? Is that still the main
Yes.
fundraising?
So the only thing that has changed, for the most part, the funds are going to the Princess Margaret Hospital Foundation. So Jimmy, which is Laura Dana's husband, Jimmy does the Ride to Conquer Cancer every year in, I believe it's June, I think, somewhere in the summertime. So he does the Ride to Conquer Cancer. So we make sure that he's got, his funds are in there to make sure that, he gets that, which is sponsored by Princess Margaret. And then we have another Princess Margaret fund that the money goes into as well on behalf of Evening of Hope. But there have been times, just for complete honesty, that we have taken some of those funds and we've done other illnesses. We've supported others. So my mom died of cancer a few years back, and so I've always supported her. My dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer. So the year that he passed, I decided to take, a portion of our funds and donate it to the Alzheimer's Society. We've had people approach us about pancreatic cancer that have family. So it used to be called the Evening to End Breast Cancer. Now we've just changed it to Evening of Hope, covering Princess Margaret. So that'll cover any cancer treatment you're treating. So there are times that if someone comes to us and says, would you consider a small donation to this group or to that group? As long as it's a registered group and it falls within the parameters of what we're doing, then we will do that.
So, Laura, you mentioned that at the beginning when you first started this fundraiser, that your first year you raised 4,000.
Right.
How are you guys doing today with 700 plus people? I mean, the event
Yeah.
you must do very
Let's
well
say
because
this. Yeah.
you guys have raised a lot of money for these charities and
Yes.
these worthwhile causes, obviously.
Yes. Yes, we have. In total, so I usually do the books at the end of every fundraiser. So now this is going back 20 years, including the first year that we've done it. And we are just over 2.2 million in
Wow.
funds raised. Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah. So, yeah. So
That's
we're
amazing.
pretty happy about that.
That's amazing. It seems there's just never enough money for this stupid disease.
No,
You know,
it doesn't. Yeah, I know. I agree. 100%.
yeah,
100%. And
that's
then it's hard, like you say, when you have other people approaching you about other diseases, which deservedly need the funds as well. But I can only do so much. If I commit to a specific, cause, I kind of have to stick with that specific cause.
yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to next year's event because I know they're usually around Valentine's.
Yes. Next year event actually is going to be a little bit special because it's right on Valentine's, Saturday, February 14th, at the Venetian. So yeah, it's going to be quite the event for
Well, I'm
sure.
looking forward to it. Laura, one last question before we sign off. What what can you offer in terms of thoughts or advice for anybody out there that let's go specifically to breast cancer
Okay.
for young women coming up, whether they're teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever it is, because I think actual screening, like we touched on earlier, really doesn't start until a little bit later in life.
Right.
So you mentioned earlier that you do speak with some of your younger family members, friends.
Yep.
What can you say to people out there?
It's your right. It's your right as a Canadian. It's part of our health plan. There should be no reason why you should be denied. There should be no reason why you'd have to wait until you're 50. Um, I can probably assure you that a lot of these younger ladies already know people their own age that are going through this. So that's a wake up call in itself. That's something that, you go see your doctor and he says, well, no, you don't need it. You're only 26. And that's your response. Well, so is my friend so and so with no family history. And now she's going through breast cancer. And I don't want that for my life. I want the mammogram. Give me a requisition. Demand it. Don't take no for an answer.
Yeah, that's such a good point because I mean, as everybody knows, early detection is so important. It's key.
Absolutely, for sure. Yep. Yep.
Right. I'm gonna leave it at that. I You have no idea, Laura, how thankful I am for you to come on and share your experiences and open yourself up to you know to extending your story. The good parts, the bad parts, and everything in between. So at the end of the day,
Yes.
it's all character building, and we pass it along. So
Absolutely. Listen, there is no thanks necessary. Like I said, I'm honored to be a part of it, and I was honored when you called me on it. You know me, you've known me for quite some time. I will do whatever it is I can do to help support all of this. I always have and I always will. Um, Kudos to you for what you're doing, and I think you're making a huge difference in a lot of people out there because people are starting to listen. So, again, that's huge, and congratulations to you, for all the future success you'll have with this.
Well, thanks again, Laurie. I really appreciate those kind words.
No worries.
All right.
Bye, Albano.
Bye.